Welcome to TOSB Conversation Starters, microcasts that present top insights from leading global experts on the ideas that are shaping our world. Today, we are speaking with Mansi Zaveri, founder and CEO of India's most trusted discovery platform for parenting and childcare, kidstoppress.com, which boasts over 10 million views per month. Based out of Mumbai, this mom of two combined her passion for digital medium and her parenting journey to become an entrepreneur, leaving behind a corporate life to empower parents to make informed choices. Mansi is the voice of the new age discerning Indian parent and has emerged as the strongest influencer in the parenting and baby care space. Mansi, thank you very much for joining us today. Let's jump right into it. We've been hearing a lot about Superwoman Syndrome, this pressure that women put on themselves to have it all and do it all, and how it has become even more exaggerated in a work from home environment, especially when women are seen as primary caretakers, handling home and kids, and their work all the same time. What do you think? Are women too hard on themselves?
Thanks, Tanish. Thanks for the question. And thanks for having me over. I think, yes, the superwoman syndrome is one, I think, is self imposed. I think we've always been, as children, right? And because I come from the parenting and baby care space, I think as kids, we've always been taught. And look at, and if we just take back a few of the moments or sentences that we remember of what our parents said. Don't cry. You're strong. You don't need, you can do anything that you want, right? Look how well she's doing for herself, or look how well he's doing for herself. So a few of the takeaways here is comparison. Failure is bad. To cry and be vulnerable is bad. And while all of this really is a character that builds a lot of grit, it also somewhere builds the superwoman syndrome in a lot of us. And especially for women, we are always brought up in a way saying, तुमको ये भी manage करना है, तुमको ये भी manage करना है, तुमको ये भी manage करना है. So in a way, that conditioning that we've gone through as kids kind of continues. And therefore, when you become, from a woman to a mother, that somewhere continues and you pass that on to your children. And then it's somewhere ingrained in your bloodstream and you don't even know it. So yes, superwoman syndrome exists, or rather it's ingrained into us from the time that we're born. Having it all is extremely overhyped as a concept. But what they don't teach us is that you can have it all, maybe not at the same time. So I think that understanding that is very, very critical. And as women, yes, you can have a lot of the things that you want, maybe not at the same time, or you should be very cognizant of the fact that what's the price you're going to pay for it. Because everything comes with a price tag in life, right? Whether it is having children, whether it is your career, whether it is about mental health, whether it is about world peace, whether it is about being, being at the number one position that you've defined for yourself, everything will come at a price tag, right? What's the price you're ready to pay for that sort of achievement that you really, really want, and you're part of, that's part of your vision. So I think yes, and we are hard on ourselves to achieve the superwoman syndrome. But I think, and this is what I teach in a lot of the workshops that I do, and a lot of the work that we do with a lot of mothers, especially women entrepreneurs in the SME space, is that we tell them that this cape that the world has burdened on you, which is the superwoman cape, just take your hands, take it to your neck, untie the knot of that cape, and do this while I'm talking to you. And just take that, untie it, and drop it. Relieve yourself of the burden of being a superwoman. Be the best version of yourself. Don't burden yourself with this tag and this title, because what it does is reduces your ability to be vulnerable. It reduces your ability to share. It reduces your ability to think, because you're already so stressed कि अच्छा ये मुझे prove करना है. To prove is important, but to prove to yourself is far more important than to the rest of the world. right? So I think those are two or three things that really are very, very important. Understand the price you want to pay, unburden yourself, and make sure that you are not passing on the burden of this cape to the next generation.
That's a good analogy about the cape which you're bringing out. But let me think and let me just ask you then, is there a balanced approach, or is there a framework for working mom when they start stepping into their professional life?
For me, balance is like a seesaw, right? Just think of yourself as a child playing in the park. And when you're sitting on the seesaw, there's sometimes that you're going to be up, sometimes you're going to be down. And to attain that equilibrium is not going to happen on all days, right? And it cannot happen on all days, because as we move through different tunnels of life, it becomes imperative to know that what's the light that you want to see at the end of the tunnel today. For today, my goal, and I'll talk about today literally when we're recording this. Today, my goal is to be present in the 6 podcasts that I have committed to being present on, right? And it becomes imperative to achieve this goal for today. For every goal that you set for yourself, make sure that you're thinking of the next step. Don't think for 20 years down the line. The minute you start breaking that down into the next goal that, or the next step that I can take, that goal just suddenly doesn't become like a 20-year-old window. It becomes like what I can do today to reach there in 20 years, right? And the goal will look smaller than you. And therefore, that work-life balance that a lot of mothers are striving for becomes far more achievable, right? So example, my goals on Monday to Friday, maybe I want to squeeze in 40 minutes of an exercise, 40 minutes of studying with my kids, 8 hours of work, 1 hour of reading, 1 hour of, being with my family, whatever. On the weekend, that may look very, very different, right? It may be 8 hours of being a mom and maybe 2 hours of work. But I've achieved that equilibrium through the week. I may not achieve it every single day, because every day proposes new opportunities, right? So trying to figure out what that work-life balance for you looks like today is far more important than anything else. Second is, your children are not looking at you as a good mom or a bad mom from the work-life equilibrium that you're achieving today. They're just looking at you as mom who loves to do what she is doing. Trust me, over a period of time, they will learn to respect you, and they will look back and feel that, wow, I'm so proud of her. I love what she does. They will tell you, why do you ever want to give up on what you're doing if you enjoy what you're doing? So if you are trying to give it up for that, to only prove to yourself that, listen, dude, I'm a failure, I can't achieve work-life balance today, then that's the mistake that you're making. When you look back, you want to be proud of yourself, and you also want your children to be proud of you, proud of the person that you are and the legacy that you will leave behind for her, or the things that she saw juggling, that she saw you juggling and struggling with.
Mansi, that's a great point you've picked up right now about people will respect you for the kind of work which you're doing. But what about the frameworks which we have already learned through our journey when we are growing up, and we say, for example, you're in college, certain experiences, and then you enter a workplace. Now you're coming with a lot of experiences. For a man, let me say, certain studies say that it's slightly easy, but for women it is difficult, right? I mean, they are putting on multiple hats and they have to perform in different ways. How do you break that? And in on top of all of that, how do you keep yourself mentally stable?
So I would say, first off, Danish, it's a brilliant question, and I really believe that life is kind of broken down into 3 folds, right? So like you beautifully said, that the first 10 years where your focus is, you're like a sponge, right? Your brain is like a sponge. You just have to absorb those experiences, because they're shaping you for so many different opportunities that life's going to pose you, right? And we all know that a child's brain is developed till the age of 5, and therefore that exposure, that conversation, that talking, that music, that muscle development, that growth, everything is so important till the age of 5. And of course, till the age of 10, they're like sponges. Just keep giving them experiences that they will remember and imbibe in their future life, right? So that's up till the age of 10. Between 10 to 18, or 10 to 20, the second fold of life, is about putting them into practice and focusing on the education choices, right? I think some of those things are very, very important, but who are you looking up to for those choices, right? So you're looking at a mentor, you're looking at a guardian, you're looking at your parents, you're looking at your teachers. So those become your role models, and those are the decisions that you want to make. Between 20 to 30, 35, you're pretty much in the corporate workspace, or you're growing up the ladder, and that's the time that you want to say, okay, how do I put all of this that I have learned over the last 2 decades into play now, right? And you will find such a seamless approach into things that you will start, the discipline that your parents put in, okay, that you need to wake up at 7 o'clock, you need to do this, your desk needs to be clean, you need to eat this, a lot of those. And for a lot of the younger lot who's listening to this podcast, it will just seem like epiphany each time that your boss tells you something, or your coworker tells you something, and you're like, shit, it just feels like a deja vu moment that time, because you just feel like your parents are somewhere in the ambient and they would have done it this way, or your teacher or someone you get inspired for would have done it like this, right? So all of those things play back. And then when you're ready to embrace and take responsibility of another individual, which is when you're becoming a parent, you realize that literally, like anybody who said that, you literally feel your parents, or you start respecting them a lot more after you become parents, was so damn right, because at every point in time, you will value them even more. And for moms especially, and you're right, at a data perspective, while a fraction of the society today says that for a working mom and a working dad, life is the same. Yes, it is. But I truly believe there's one primary caregiver for the child. It could be the mother, it could be the father. But for that primary caregiver, it's very important to take their health, mental and physical, both very, very seriously. And I would say, why is that very important? Because we've heard this a zillion times, you cannot be pouring out of an empty cup, right? And the world makes us believe, right? And especially for Indians, because we're growing up in a very, very close-knit social structure, that हर time family के साथ रहो. Why do you need to be alone? What are you going to do alone? चलो ये बुला रहा है, or we have to go this Sunday with this one. You have to meet this relative from here, or this or that. We kind of are grown up in that sort of social structure, right? We give very little time to individual growth, or very little time to spending time alone, or very little time to exercise. अरे exercise की क्या ज़रूरत है? You are all thin and swelled. You don't need to exercise. Exercise is मोटे लोग करते हैं. This is our conditioning. And why do I emphasize on physical health as much as mental health? Because a lot of your mental health is also a fraction of, or a factor of, how you feel about yourself physically. If you're fit, and physical fitness, we know, releases those endorphins. It makes us feel good, right? So that's why it becomes such an important part of mental health. Now, if you've been following me on social media, on Instagram especially, where I share a lot of emphasis on physical health, is because when you feel good about yourself, you can pass that on to your children. And what you're showing to your children, very, very subliminally, is you need to make time for every aspect of your life, right? You need to make time for physical growth, physical health. You need to make time for mental health. So when my kids see me early in the morning, waking up at 5, journaling or meditating or going out for a run, and then they see, okay, now 6:30, she's back home, she's doing her little bit of spiritual sense, then, she's available for us, then she's available for her workspace, and then she's available back for family. They are subliminally also understanding, this is how I need to compartmentalize my life when I grow up. And that is why I say, two families and that primary caregiver, whether it's the mom or whether it's the dad, make sure that you are making time for yourself, because you will never know when you spark that trigger and you don't know what kind of anchors you. Why are you getting angry? You'll forget, because if you're not spending time with yourself, you'll forget to understand what are the triggers of anger. How can you control that? Because you don't even know how to control it. First, you can't identify the trigger. Second, you can't understand how to tackle it, right? So if you can't identify that, you will not be happy, and therefore you will not have people around you happy. Yes, it's been a tough 2 years, but it's been the same for everyone else. So the only solace as humans that we get is, I'm not the only one in it, right? What can I do to get out of it, right? Sulk. You feel bad, sulk for a week, sulk for 10 days, but the next thought process should be, what can I do to get out of it? If you have that mindset, you'll get out of anything.
Which takes me to a woman who's working in an organization, right? I mean, one which I personally feel the psychological safety net should be there, which a lot of times is missing. And on top of that, we keep on using the word D&I. Now, how an organization can bring in an inclusive mindset for working women?
Yeah. Again, this is a brilliant question, and I would say, and I spoke of this a lot in my inclusivity workshops that we did a whole parenting boot camp for a few of the larger organizations. And very important, I would say, before the organization, is for the woman to make sure, is for the mother to make sure that she asks for help, right? Make sure that you are communicating, whether it's your team, whether it's your boss, to share, listen, these are my boundaries. To define boundaries is not a sign of weakness. People respect boundaries, right? And when you're going to say, listen, I'm going to be unavailable for this hour to this hour, you're not showing a sign of weakness. Nobody can pull you up saying that, hey, you can't be promoted this year because you are drawing these boundaries and you're unavailable for whatever hours. Trust me, we're all moving to a space where people are going to respect you for that, right? But make those boundaries reasonable, right? But depending on which sector or which business you are. For example, if you are going to say, hey, it's the most peak hour for your business in your segment or in your company, and you're going to draw a boundary at that point in time, of course, your boss is not going to appreciate you. But if something can be done over, if it can be demarcated and if it is agreeable by the entire team, then make sure that you're kind of working around that. So draw boundaries, communicate effectively with your team. Bosses and senior leadership people, you got to say what you mean, but don't say it mean, right? I think, again, very important. If you're going to bring in the gender will exist. If you're not going to bring in the gender, trust me, the gender does not exist. And again, when you're giving feedback, say what you mean. You don't need to be nasty and mean to that person, right? So as leaders, we need to be very, very aware of this. Again, we always expect people to read between the lines. Can you make complete clarity in communication so employees don't need to read between the lines, things are not misinterpreted, and therefore there is time saved with misconstrued communication. Very, very important. Another very important thing is we always have the habit of going up to someone's desk and speaking, right? And therefore that habit in a hybrid work model says, let me just pick up the phone and call, right? And of course, a whole barrage of WhatsApp messages. Can, as leaders and part of the organizational structure, set up effective communication softwares and apps that make communication super easy for employees. Something that could be sent over as a Slack message or a team message on Asana or Microsoft Teams. Can that be changed versus picking up the phone and calling each time, right? So things are documented, and therefore communication does not go haywire, and you're not intruding into somebody's personal phone time on, say, WhatsApp, right, where communication can get lost. I'll give you a classic example. We did a brilliant podcast with a lady officer from the army, and she said, I had to take my child to the camp, and when they start, and she fought the Kargil war with him, and she said, they were never allowed to switch on lights in the night during war, but I had to ask for a special permission to keep my child with me during that 7-day period, even though it's not allowed, because how would my child stay on a military camp without any electricity, right? The senior in the military camp granted that permission for that 7-day period. Why? Because she asked. Women make the mistake of not asking. Here you're talking of war, right? And a very, very important war. I'm sure that what we are doing is not as unpredictable as or as serious as a woman or that captain was doing at that point in time, right?
That's a brilliant example. I was just thinking about the war situation. I mean, and that was a case where you couldn't switch on the lights because the enemy could see you. Anyway, coming back to the question of, there are a lot of COVID babies around us. What about young mothers who are coming back to work? What are your tips for them?
First up, make sure that every time spent away from your child is what you love doing, right? So identify if the space that you're in, what you're going back for, is what you absolutely love, or create that role for yourself. Second is, again, I think they're really lucky because of this hybrid work model. I think it's such a great time because your 6 months of paternity is kind of extended to infinity in many ways, to be physically present around your child, right? Earlier, we would get a lot of questions that I need to, stop nursing my child because I need to go back or whatever, right? Now that those periods have extended. So I think it really works for a lot of working women. Second is make sure that you kind of, like I said, create your boundaries, keep yourself relevant, right? Don't assume and don't be in this rat race to prove yourself, okay, that I need to overcompensate because I am the one who's delivered a child. Trust me, nobody is judging you from that perspective, right? People are judging you for the work that you're doing, and you do not need to, of course, if you want to overcompensate in terms of work from a perspective that you can value add, most definitely, but don't let that come from a space of fear, right? Because when it comes from a space of fear and not love, it's not your best foot forward, right? So I think that would be very important. Keep yourself relevant, keep yourself updated. Things have changed, things have evolved, and make sure that you're carving out enough time to keep yourself updated, right? And work your baby schedule around supposing if you need to be on a team networking call or a growth webinar that you want to do personally or a course you want to take, the child schedule can be worked around, right? The child needs you at a very, very physical level at this point in time, and the child knows what you're sharing with the child, right? For a large part of the time that my children were younger, I was always working. For a large part of the time, my kids have only grown up seeing me exercising at 6 a.m. and not being present at that moment. They've always seen me doing a headstand and, upside down or whatever. And that's how they've grown up. So that's what they know, right? So your child is not going to hate you or disregard you or feel like, oh, my mom was learning or she was growing or she was building herself and that's why I'm going to hate her for the rest of the life. No, just prioritize, work your child's schedule around. And of course, a whole lot of this is what you will find on Kids Stop Breast. So I'm sure a lot of the young moms can figure out a lot of their questions that they're seeking on the platform as well.
That's nice. That's very, very nice.
That was Mansi Zaveri, one of India's most trusted voices in the parenting and childcare space. Mansi works with organizations to improve their employee empathy quotient for women and is also an educator in social and digital marketing. Especially for entrepreneurs, reach out to our team to engage with her. We at TOSB work with experts across the globe who are engaging with and leading the most cutting-edge ideas in their fields. TOSB Conversation Starters is our way of bringing short takes and lessons from these experts to you to kick off conversations that matter. Stay tuned for new episodes every fortnight.